Waterman is the great hit maker in British music history.
There ain't no lows in my career, they're all highs.
Now, what I am fed up with people believing is that anybody over the age of 22 is too old.
I mean, he's had more number ones than the Beatles.
Touch me, touch me, touch me, touch me! Ah!
But away from the music, his personal life has been pretty disastrous. Pete's been through 3 failed marriages. He's been through some terrible tragedy in his life, the loss of a son and the near loss of another son.
You know, I've come from some dark places, and some of that pain is very difficult. Don't be too hard, son. I'm an old man these days.
Pete Waterman, your career spans almost 50 years as a songwriter and producer. You've clocked up an incredible 18 UK #1 singles, which is more than the Beatles, Cliff Richard and Madonna. Pretty amazing, right? I mean, that's an amazing statistic. Do you ever pinch yourself and think, wow, more than the Beatles?
Oh, Piers, I pinch myself every day I wake up. You know, leaving school, you know, in Coventry, to end up, you know, in the City of London, you know, being part of an international business, having all the success, it's impossible. You can't ever. So, yes, I wake up daily and think, my God, this is an amazing, amazing trip to be on.
You said that at the height of your success in the late 80s, you and your partners, Mike Stock and Matt Aiken, were earning £1 million a day, equivalent to about £2 million a day in today's money. Staggering.
You know what? I wish I'd have enjoyed it. Didn't know I was doing it. Too busy doing it. You know, there was no time to stop and smell the roses.
You did buy a few roses,
Oh, well,
though.
yeah.
You
yeah.
were pretty extravagant, Pete.
Yeah.
At one stage, it was alleged that you bought 18 Ferraris in a single day.
Not true.
How many was it?
I only ever bought one a day. I did have 18.
You also splashed out on a rather fancy bathroom. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Did you spend £200,000 on gold-plated taps?
Not true.
How much was it?
60 grand.
Your exact quote at the time you spent this money on the bathroom was, "Where better to look at my money than when I'm sitting in the bath?"
Well, that is actually that is a true statement. I said, when I come from a council house that didn't have a bathroom, at least when I sit in my bath every morning and smoke my cigar, I'll know I've made it.
You've been quoted as being somewhere between 30 and 45 million pounds as a fortune.
That's my weight.
Are either of those figures anywhere near
No.
accurate?
No.
A lot more?
No.
Less?
Yeah, of course.
Really?
Yeah.
Are all those figures ridiculous?
Yeah, of course they are.
Now, you've been involved in the creation of over 200 hit singles. Do you have an instinctive, absolutely cast-iron gut feel for a hit?
Yes.
What is it? What tells you?
I get goosebumps. I literally do get goosebumps.
You feel it?
Yeah.
Have you ever thought that is a guaranteed #1 and it completely tanks?
Oh, of course. Oh, of course. I mean, I wouldn't be sitting here if I'd not had failures.
Thank you very much.
That's all right.
Has it come to this? Pete, let's take a look back at how you became the country's best-known hitman.
Remember where you saw this record first.
Pete Waterman has clocked up nearly 50 years in the music business
Pete was like king of the pops.
and sold 500 million records.
You can't ignore Pete Waterman's place in music history.
He's a multi-award-winning producer,
Pete was a great ideas man.
DJ, songwriter,
He just wrote cracking pop songs.
and TV judge.
Simon, you must have something in your ears, mate.
I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you today if it wasn't for Pete Waterman.
Pete was born in 1947 in a council house by the railway in bombed-out Coventry.
Pete and I used to walk to and from primary school every day, and we crossed over a railway bridge. There was always a steam train coming past, and I feel that's where Pete got his love for trains from.
I call him a train spotter with an enthusiasm for music.
Pete left school at 14 to become a railwayman. Soon his passion for music took over. And he became a DJ.
He was so passionate about records. It was always, hey, listen to this one, kid. It's fantastic. You got to play this one tonight.
And in the 70s, the boy from Coventry got noticed.
Pete came down to London with all these other DJs, and you could see the one that just stood out.
He was offered a job at Magnet Records.
He was full of buzz, absolutely loved his music, really, you know, was just this character.
Pete began to build a reputation as one of Britain's top music producers, scoring his first #1 hit.
That was Pete's first big successful record.
Then he teamed up with composers Mike Stock and Matt Aiken, forming Stock, Aiken and Waterman, and hitting the #1 spot again.
That put SAW on the map.
The Hit Factory was born.
And it was a hit factory. I mean, literally, whoever you put into that system would come out with a hit record.
Kylie,
Bananarama,
Jason,
Donna Summer,
Mel and Kim.
Rick Astley.
Stock, Aiken and Waterman had a top 40 hit every week for 4 years.
He was building an empire, and he was fearless.
Pete would come in with these great ideas. I've got Jason Donovan, you know, he's a young 20-year-old, you know, he's just had his heart broken. Too many broken hearts. OK, write that song.
There'd been a newspaper story about me saying Sunita has a toy boy. Pete saw that and thought, I've got it, toy boy.
Somehow he was able to smell out where that next hit was going to come from.
Pete had become a musical force to be reckoned with. But throughout his rise, Pete had a secret known only to those closest to him.
I know a lot about Pete's childhood and growing up, and I know that he didn't read or write for a very long period of his life.
Growing up, I didn't know that he didn't read or write particularly. It wasn't until he had actually learnt to read and write that he was open about it, because he was embarrassed by it.
In his 30s, on a rare break from work, he decided to do something about it.
In the 80s, he actually learnt to write properly, and I mean, I don't know how long it took him, but, you know, his reading and writing is actually really good now.
When he became able to read a little bit, he started to devour books. He read book after book after book on all sorts of subjects.
Quite extraordinary revelation that it wasn't until your 30s you could read or write. Amazing.
I never was shy of it, Piers. I never was ashamed of my education.
But to be in your line of work and not be able to read newspapers or books about artists or music or whatever it may be, was it very difficult for you?
Gave me a passion. Gave me a passion. And, you know, when I did find books, as Steve Jenkins says there, I devoured them.
And what's amazing is I've got a copy of the first book that you read. And what's amazing is it's a really dense, quite complicated book.
Yeah, it is.
Called Das Boot, a famous book. But, I mean, this is hardly the first book you would use to learn how to read.
Well, put it this way, I think if that's your first book, everything else is light. Shakespeare was quiet after that.
What was it that triggered you wanting to learn how to read?
Easy, that one. I had a girlfriend who wouldn't go on holiday with me unless I learned to read. She wasn't prepared to sit on the beach with me talking to her. If you want me to go on holiday with you, you'll get a book.
How did you get away with this? How did you bluff people?
I had a secret friend who was called my bank manager. And the first Ferrari I bought, and I said, I need a cheque for £33,000 making out to this company. And he wrote it out for me. I could probably spell 30, but I couldn't spell, the rest of it. 1,000, I'd never written...
Could you even spell Ferrari?
No. No.
So you were
Probably
buying
still
18
can't now,
Ferraris?
actually.
Go on, try.
F-E-R-R-I-E.
No.
There you go.
In 1984, you teamed up with two musicians, Mike Stock and Matt Aiken, to form the legendary Stock, Aitken and Waterman. You had over 100 top 40 singles, and as I said earlier, at one stage, you were in the top 40 every week for 4 years. It really was a hit factory.
It really was hard work.
Yeah, I was going to say. I mean, but what was the secret, do you think, when you look back at
hard work. I was working 20 hours a day. There was nothing going to take my focus away. This was serious. We were selling millions of records to people who believed in what we were doing. We went against everything that the industry wanted. We were the absolute anti-industry, which is why we wrote Respectable. You can love us, you can hate us. You ain't ever going to change us. We ain't ever going to be respectable.
How much of a bastard were you looking back?
Walked away from 3 women.
Let's go back to where it all started. You were born Peter Alan Waterman in Coventry on the 15th of January 1947, and you almost were dead on arrival.
I was dead on arrival.
Why was that?
I was choked by the umbilical cord and about to be, put in the bag and carted off. And my granddad got a bottle of a well-known brand of brandy, stuck it on a spoon, stuck it down my neck and whacked my arse.
Really?
And I thought, yes.
Well, come on, what was the brandy?
Martell.
Do you still drink Martell to this day?
I still like to Martell, yeah.
Toasting your life.
Yeah, absolutely.
The Waterman family lived in the only council house in the road. Quite an unusual situation.
Yeah.
Did it feel like a stigma to you that you were the only council house?
No, but I think you knew you were different. Only we didn't have curtains. Everybody else had curtains. And if you broke the window playing football, there was a cardboard cutout in there for a long time.
I mean, it's amazing, given how wealthy you became, because, your mum used to put on the electricity when your dad got in from work to save money, and that was the only time it was on.
My dad loved his job. He was passionate about his job. He was an aircraft fitter. Loved every minute of it. Probably didn't make enough money to make ends meet, if the truth was known, without the overtime. By about Monday, Tuesday at the latest, they'd run out of all money. There was no money in the house. But she would save a shilling for the meter for Tuesday night, Wednesday night and Thursday night. So that the minute she heard my dad coming up the path, she would put the bob in the meter. So my dad never knew he didn't have electricity. That's how much she loved him.
It's amazing. Now, when you were 16, or nearly 16, you went to see the Beatles play in Coventry. And that night was a bit of a turning point too for you. Why?
That was it. It changed my life. They walked out on the stage and went, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'd never seen that happen before. That was it. I was hooked.
They're also rebellious because there was a convention that bands in the early 60s would always play the national anthem at the end of the show.
Yeah,
but what did they play?
Well, we still had a policeman in the ballroom in those days. And the policeman's job was to make you stand up. So the drum roll for the national anthem, and everybody stood up and they went, well, shake it up, baby, now. And like, Christ, that's revolution. And then they went off without playing the national anthem. And the policeman's running around trying to get me to play the national anthem. Fantastic. And you just look at this and you think, that's it. That's
going to be my life.
That's what I want to do.
Did you ever want to be a pop star yourself?
For a brief minute.
We actually have that brief minute.
Oh, no.
Here's an exclusive picture of Tomorrow's Kind. Look at that. It's almost the Rolling Stones.
Oh, dear.
With a few extra pounds. Were you any good?
No. No, that's why I packed up. But I could sing.
Yeah.
Again, my talent of picking songs We worked because we knew exactly what to play, so we got lots of gigs.
You began to establish yourself as a DJ. Can you remember your first name as a DJ?
Suck it to me, Pete Waterman.
Actually, I think it was Dan D. Lyon.
Oh, really?
But through DJing, you got into the music business. In fact, you were so dedicated that you used to attend the famous New York disco, Studio 54.
With Dalios, yeah.
Most people wore sequins and spandex, but you had a rather different outfit, didn't you, Pete?
Yeah, I wore a sock over me willy.
And that was all you had?
That was it.
That must have been an attractive sight.
I didn't get in, so it wasn't that attractive. It didn't work.
It didn't work?
No.
It was a good try, though.
Yeah, it was a good try.
Pete, your career was taking off, but your private life wasn't always as successful. In the late 80s, Stock Aitken and Waterman were ruling the charts. But not everybody was impressed by their particular brand of pop.
Pete, Mike and Matt were no longer creating inverted commas because of Kylie and Rick. Everybody thought it was sold out as pop.
You know, Music Week would write about us that we want real music and who do we think we are, and it's like an insult to the music industry.
So Pete wanted to make a record that had that cred factor, like a funk track.
Stock Aitken and Waterman anonymously released an underground dance track.
We put it out on a 12-inch promo and just called it Roadblock with nothing else on it.
Everyone was raving about it, top of the charts, everyone going, now this is real music. But guess what? It was Stock Aitken Waterman.
Once the secret was out, Pete, Matt and Mike appeared in the pop video. In the 80s, Pete was also forging a TV career. You had to stay up pretty late to see him. It went out after midnight.
As the standard of television plummets to new lows.
I just remember there were lots of people in day glow pants and headbands.
We're dancing in Blackpool!
I tried not to watch Hitman there, to be honest. It wasn't my favourite show. Sorry about that, Pete.
Touch me, touch me, touch me, touch me! Ah!
Chaos, absolute chaos, but fun.
Remember where you saw this record first.
But in 2001, Pete hit the prime time.
Welcome once again to Pop Idol.
As a judge alongside his former protege, Simon Cowell.
I actually thought the show was always going to be about him. And it really was.
He was as good as Nat King Cole.
It wasn't about being on TV. He was determined to find a hit artist and took it really, really seriously.
I have watched this kid. His vocals tonight were brilliant.
We used to argue the whole time.
I am fed up with people believing that anybody over the age of 22 is too old to be a pop idol.
This has got nothing to do with age.
But although Pete's career had made him a household name,
You're through.
his private life was not such a success story. His 3 marriages have all ended in divorce.
I knew his first wife, Anne, I knew his second wife, Julie, and I knew his third wife, Denise. I think I was best man at all his weddings, almost.
Pete's first marriage at the age of 23 lasted only 4 years.
And he had a son, Paul, by his first wife.
And his second marriage in 1979 produced another son, little Pete.
People always ask me if it was strange that, you know, growing up with my dad, having all these #1 records, but it was all I ever knew. But, I mean, it's been amazing.
But Pete was never there, and the marriage ended in 1984.
He was always away working and just didn't see us all that much, and my mum was very young and just with her first child, and it was just tough for them.
In 1991, Pete married Denise Gingell of Tight Fit fame. The couple had 2 daughters, Charlie and Tony.
It wasn't a typical father-daughter relationship because he wasn't there in the way that my friends' dads were there and they'd go home and they'd see their dad. It wasn't like that.
I think the way that we grew up, we were used to it, and we were used to that was his life and that was his career.
But sadly, after 8 years, this marriage also ended in divorce.
To achieve #1 records, you have to give it 16 hours a day, which doesn't leave very much time for your personal life.
That's what he's had to do to get where he is. He's had to sacrifice part of his family life to achieve these things.
Merry Christmas. There's always a tinge of sort of sort of not regret, but longing for something that never was. That, you know, we didn't have the relationship that, you know, one would want to have with their father, but that's how it was. You can't change that. So you accept the fact that he was so dedicated to what he was doing that he wanted to do it.
You said that if you regret anything, it's that you've hurt people along the way and that you've been a bastard.
Yes.
How much of a bastard were you looking back?
Well, you've just shown how much of a bastard I walked away from 3 women. That's not easy, but as you've heard, for me, there was no choice. That was, I believe, was what my destiny was and still is.
When you hear your children just saying, we wished he'd been around more, do you feel a great pang of regret?
Couldn't have done it. I think they understand. You have to give it 100%. I can't not give it 100%.
Knowing what you were like, knowing how obsessive you were, why did you keep getting married?
I think, you know, I wanted to get married. I mean, you long for something that maybe was impossible. I don't know.
What sort of husband were you?
Terrible.
How terrible?
Well, I was never there. I mean, if, you know, to Julie, I mean, we lived in Coventry. I commuted to London every single day of the week. You know, do I regret it? Yes, I feel sorry that I did that. But could I have chosen any other path? No, not at all.
All these very attractive women that you used to work with, Sunita, Banana Armour, did you ever, you know...
No.
Never?
Nope.
Not even first base?
Nope. You know why? I'm lucky enough that somebody once, very early in my career, said, you never have a relationship with artists. If you do, you can't produce them.
What's your life like at the moment in terms of women? Do you have a woman in your life?
No, I don't need one. It's called music.
Even now?
Yeah. I mean, now I'm happy, you know, just being me.
Do you date?
If I want to date, yeah. I don't feel like I want to date. I don't want to go through all that again. You know, I think that when you get to a certain age, I think dating would frighten the life out of me, to be quite honest. Lonely record producer,
dating, right?
66, looking for... Can you imagine? Can you imagine that? I think it would freak me out. I would not know what to say if I turned up for a date. I wouldn't know what to say.
What kind of woman would be your perfect woman, do you think?
The next hit that makes number 1.
You actually mean that, don't you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
The one woman who remained constant in your life was your mother, Stella. You were incredibly close to her. Tell me about her.
Oh, I think that, yeah, incredibly close. Not just close. She was everything, you know. She was fantastic to me. And I think that, you know, when we said earlier there was no money in the family, and there really wasn't. I went without nothing, Piers. Mm. Whatever I wanted, I got.
Did she see much of your success?
Yeah, I mean, a little bit. I had my first big hit record, which was Love Me, Love My Dog with Peter Shelley. And so we turned up at my house, which was in Burlington Road, Stoke Heath, in this Rolls Royce with this silver disc. And we walked up, and my mum could hardly walk. She was at the door before we parked the Rolls Royce. Get that bloody thing moved around the corner. Because she said, they'll think the bailiffs are in. And when I went to put the silver disc up on the wall, my mum wouldn't let me put it up because she said it was ostentatious.
She died at the age of 51, tragically young, really.
Yeah, but my mum was ill anyway. She'd had a serious heart attack the year before. In the end, you know, the pain for her was too much. And, you know, God was more important to her than the pain. And she said to me, you know, Pete, I've had enough now. I'm ready now. You can have me. The fans carried me over their heads onto the pitch. Now I am going to cry because this is an amazing moment.
Let's move on to Simon Cowell. because in an unusual moment of modesty, at his 50th birthday party, I was there. Everyone was there, star-studded, all his friends, family, celebrities and so on. And he said this: there's one person I really want to thank. Everyone thought he might say his mum, who he's very close to, or somebody else, but it was you. He said, I want to thank Pete Waterman because I wouldn't be where I am without him today. And that was a pretty remarkable thing for him to say. How did you feel?
He needn't have said a word. He never needs to give me the credit that he does on the Oprah Winfrey Show, whatever he does. But he has never forgotten that I always stood by him, and whatever he wanted, I did. You know, sometimes it was difficult, but I was there to give him the breaks when he needed the breaks.
He said he followed you around like a dog for 2 years, trying to persuade you to produce Sunita.
Yeah.
That's what he told us.
When Simon wants something, he doesn't let go. It's legendary.
You're quite similar, really, aren't you?
I'm not as ruthless as Simon is. I wish I was. I think I've admitted that I'm pretty hard. But by Simon's standards, I'm a pussycat.
Another very famous person you've worked with is Sir Paul McCartney.
Yeah.
Tell me how that came about.
I was a DJ on Radio City, and I was on the air that fateful Saturday morning of the football match.
The Hillsborough disaster.
The Hillsborough disaster. And I got a call.
To do a record?
Well, at that point, it was to do a tribute. And I said, well, I'm just going to go to Liverpool, to famous people from Liverpool to do this. If you're going to do this, you've got to talk to Paul McCartney. He wasn't Sir then. And so I picked up the phone, as you do. Paul, it's Pete here.
Did you get through to him?
Yeah.
Just like that?
Yeah. He said, anything you want, you got. Came by the studio, and he was magnificent. I mean, he was fantastic.
It was Ferry Across the Mersey was the song, wasn't it? Yeah.
And he misses the note. He literally got emotional. Oh, I loved it. That's me as the record producer. Whoa, there's the money shot. That's it. So I remember sending it down to his house, and Linda rang me. She said, we love it. We absolutely love it. He's going to call you. Don't give in. Right? And I said, why? He said, well, he wants you to redo his vocal. I said, well, I'm not being funny, but the record's out tomorrow. And she said, no, the whole family love it. We love it. You've got the whole McCartney family vote. You've got to deal with him. And he came on, and I had this, I'll come up and do it now. No, Paul, the record's out tomorrow. No, I'll come up in the car now. And I promise you, the record had been at #1 for 3 weeks. He'd still wanted to come and do it. It didn't matter that there was a bum note, because it was about, this was a tragedy. This was a disaster. Yeah. They closed Anfield, and they cleared a path for me to walk with the wreath from the bands to put on the pitch to make the video. I remember I had I parked the car in the car park at Anfield. I never touched the ground. The fans carried me over their heads onto the pitch. Now I am going to cry, because this is an amazing moment. These people were, they saw that I took that time out of my life to join them and make sure that that record was about Liverpool. The people on it were working in Liverpool. Everybody was a part of the community that it was about. And they treated me unbelievable. That was an amazing moment.
By 1993, Peter split with partners Mike Stock and Matt Aitken, and the Hit Factory became history.
There was a while where Pete was kind of in the wilderness.
But in 1997, Peter discovered a new act, Steps.
5, 6, 7, 8. We were going to make line dancing cool. Nobody else got it, but Pete got it.
Pete just got it. He just went British ABBA.
And that was his catchline. It was ABBA on speed, and it kind of stuck.
Steps became Pete's biggest pop group ever, selling 20 million records and releasing 13 consecutive top 5 singles.
We never expected that level of success. The way Pete was able to turn it from a one-off hit record into a multi-million selling international touring act was beyond any of our expectations.
Peter been joined in the business by his two sons, Paul and little Pete.
So my brother went to work for my dad when he got to like 17 and always wanted to do the same. And I went and spent every summer holiday working with him in the studios.
The Waterman dynasty was beginning to form.
It was a proper kind of family unit working on steps.
Then in 1998, just as their smash hit Tragedy was entering the charts, the Waterman family suffered a tragedy of their own. Little Pete was involved in a serious go-karting accident.
Someone come running across the track completely on fire.
He was basically completely covered head to toe in 2nd and 3rd degree burns. He was in intensive care, like very close to death for quite a long time.
This was just before Christmas, and then I was like put to sleep till New Year. So it was very close to, you know, I almost died. I was very lucky to survive.
Pete dropped everything to be at his son's bedside.
Me and my dad became closer, and so we got to spend a lot of time together in hospital, and it wasn't about work. We just sat and talked about things that were a lot more personal, and it really did, I think it helped our relationship.
When little Pete recovered, he was back working in the studio with Dad and big brother Paul.
We all felt that Paul was going to go on to be a very good producer for us and produce a lot of records for us.
But in 2004, Pete's eldest son Paul was struck down by a mystery illness.
Paul started to get ill, and I think not any of us knew what was happening. And I don't think Pete knew either.
After 6 months in hospital, Paul passed away, aged just 33.
It completely broke my dad, honestly. Like, I don't think you ever get over the loss of a child.
You know that he's in pain and that he's sad and that he has all of these things that's happened to him, but he doesn't talk about them.
I don't think he's ever got over it, and I don't think he ever will.
Pete was in a very bad way. I just remember being next to him at the funeral. I said to him, Pete, you've got to carry on. That's what Paul would have wanted from you. Don't give up. You must carry on, even if it's for him and his memory.
Whenever we're together, me and my sister, and my brother and my dad, there's always somebody missing, and it's always really obvious that there's somebody missing. And I don't think that that's ever going to change.
When did you find out that Paul was ill?
I went home, because Paul lived with me, and he wasn't there. He'd been rushed to hospital. They thought he'd had a stroke, and they didn't understand it. Could be MS. Then they said, we think it's CJD. You know, the point was about this was less than 12 months before, I'm sitting with, you know, my youngest son in a coma, you know, for 3 weeks. And he's not expected to live. And then just when you think that, although obviously he's badly scarred, at least you've got your son back and you're going to go on to be happy families, suddenly you've got somebody telling you your other son has now gone down with mad cow disease. Now, you know, you're saying to yourself, my God, hang on, you know. And I go and see him in hospital, and the doctors were saying it was this or it was that, but I wasn't getting a clear picture. And the reason I wasn't getting a clear picture is that if somebody's over 18, they don't have to tell you. So he told the doctors I mustn't know how bad he was. So I'm going there thinking that, you know, we'll get him over this. And then suddenly, they said, we're going to release him. So I'm thinking, wow, this is fantastic. And I'm thinking, but hang on a minute, he's still poorly. And so I said to the doctor, you know, well, he's still poorly. And the guy looked at me and he said, Mr. Waterman, he's never going to get better. And I went, what do you mean? He went, you don't know, do you? And I went, no. He said, well, your son's got weeks to live, at the most. At that moment, the alarms went off in the hospital, right? He shot out the room. An hour later, Paul was on a life machine. He choked on a sandwich. He was in a coma. And it was Christmas. And they said he was awake yesterday. I said, what? He said he was awake yesterday. He woke up for his mum and he laughed. He laughed. He was laughing with his mum. And then they said, but we've got some seriously bad news for you. We're now having to turn the life support up to over 90%. And we're not being funny, but he could be on 100% within the next week. What do you want to do? I said, well, I'll talk to his mum. And we agreed that 93% and that's it, no more. And I said to the doctor, and how long will that give him? He said, less than 20 hours. And I went... that night, and I said good night, and I said I'll see you in the morning, you know, told him I loved him. I turned up at the hospital because I knew he wouldn't last the night. I turned up at the hospital at 5:30. I went to the room and he wasn't there. He died and they hadn't even called me. So I never saw him again.
Your family clearly don't think you've really ever got over it. I mean, is that how you feel about it?
No, I went into a very dark place, Piers. Very dark place. Hated music. Didn't want any... I just couldn't... I didn't want part of life anymore. Yeah, so I did take it badly, but am I over it? You have to get over it. But it's taken me a long time. I'm never going to not be sad, but I'm not in that dark place anymore. And again, we come back to what music does for me. A friend of mine knew that I was in a dark place, rang me and said, what are you doing Sunday night? Nothing. He said, I've got a job for you Sunday nights, DJing. Yeah, right. I'm going to go do Sunday night DJing. And he gave me a job on Smooth Radio. 4 hours on a Sunday night. He moved me to a Friday night. I'm still there. Within 3 weeks, I was back in love with music. You know, it was just...
He knew exactly what to do.
The minute it started playing all the Chic songs and all the Motown songs, I was back. My very proudest moment was that Rod Stewart did tell Chris Evans that mine was bigger than his.
Talk about Steps, because I didn't realise that they were by far your biggest act in the end. An absolute phenomenal cash cow. Right? They brought in more than Kylie, Jason, Rick, any of them. £65 million. And that was without tours and merchandising.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. And it's one of those magic moments in my life when I felt so strong about Steps that I remember coming in on the Tuesday and we'd made the record on the weekend. And Carl and Mark had done a fantastic job. And I said, this is fantastic. And they went, we don't want our name on it. You know, we don't think we should put our name on this. I said, well, I'll tell you what, kids, I'll put my bloody name on it. In fact, if you ain't got your name on it, I'm happier. If you look at the label, it says Pete Waterman. If you look at the next one, it says, you know, Topham Twiggan Waterman. I was 1,000% sure that Steps would make it.
Pete, your pop stars have come and gone, but there's one passion that's always stayed on track.
One more time.
Pete's powerful mix of talent, drive and passion means he never does anything by half.
Pete is someone I would say is all or nothing.
He gets obsessed with things quite easily.
He's had the koi fish, he's had the animals.
He had a love affair of cars as well.
So there was a garage full of Ferraris, but they're gone now and there's trains in there instead.
Pete's childhood love of trains became a lifelong passion. In 2003, he began creating a scale model of Leamington Spa Station at his Cheshire home.
The whole of this garage is filled with just replicas and little controllers, and there was just 8 grown men playing around on them. It's just, you sort of realise how far it's gone.
He has like a whole group of friends where they're all like train buffs, and they like dress up in the train outfits and they go to each other's houses. I went one time and they all sort of sat on these little train things and they all go round his friend's garden.
But Pete gets steamed up about the big stuff too.
Well, he obviously wasn't given any toys as a child, so when he became a millionaire, he just decided to buy real trains.
He's bought 6 full-size locomotives and over 200 coaches.
Didn't spend much time on Pete's trains.
When I used to get cornered for the train chats, I didn't really enjoy them. It was a lot of kind of eye-rolling and thinking, oh, gosh, you know.
We quite frequently have conversations about aging the metal and how it looks like.
But trains hadn't totally taken over from music. In 2012, Pete decided it was time to stage a comeback. He invited his artists to a good old sing-song at the O2.
It was like a class reunion.
It was like I was on stage with my bedroom wall.
It was great to see all the different artists there paying thanks to not just Pete, you know, to Mike and Matt, who changed all those people's lives. And I think everyone in the arena felt that.
But it wasn't all about blasts from the past. Pete also introduced what he hopes will be his next big thing, 16-year-old James Graham.
It's funny because when I look at him, I kind of think, well, 25 years ago.
No, there's nothing I wouldn't do.
Working in the studios with Pete, it is a dream come true for me. If Pete's got faith in me, and hopefully I can do him proud and repay him for all that he's done for me.
I think he's going to be a big star.
But the biggest stars of the night were always going to be those kids from Neighbours.
For Pete, that must have been quite a special moment.
I remember sitting with my dad in the box watching this, and I started to cry. I really wish my brother could have been there for that. And certain things you just do that you really realise that you miss someone, and I just really wished he could have been there for that, because to see all these people after all these years come back and just perform one concert together was amazing.
Wait till I get my daughter dressing up in train gear. She's got a chip off the old block, that's an exaggeration.
That evening when you brought all the acts together and the family, it sort of brought everything in your world, your life,
Do you know
all
what?
together at one time.
Do you know what, Piers? It's the first time ever I've enjoyed myself. Because for the first time ever, I was not responsible for one act on that stage other than James. And there was all these people. And for the first time, you've literally connected with them. And you've seen that, yes, it was as special to them as it was to you.
Let's talk about your true love.
Trains.
Yes.
So I'll put my whistle at.
Why do you love trains so much?
I do.
Why? What is it about trains, Pete? The noise, the smell,
everything. The people.
The uniforms?
It's the grease, it's the dirt.
But I understand you use animal fur to make grass for your train set. Is that true?
No, it's not true. You're talking about my teddy bear
Yes.
fur. We, on my railway, which you saw there, we found a fantastic way of making grass was teddy bear fur. It's not real teddy bear fur. Not that teddy bears are real.
I'm getting very surreal with this. Not real teddy bear fur, OK.
It's actually wolf fur, but it's synthetic. We buy it and we cut it, and we dye it, and we shave it, and then set fire to it. And it's... Because it's... Listen,
the only person I know who's as obsessive about trains, especially model trains, is Rod Stewart.
Well, my very proudest moment was that Rod Stewart did tell Chris Evans that mine was bigger than his.
How much money do you think you spent on trains over the years?
£5-6 million.
So, for the rest of your life, you can either keep working in music, listening to it, playing it, producing it, having hits, or you can be on the trains. You can't do both. Which one would you take?
Well, I'd have to take music. No, I couldn't. I'd have to take music.
That is the sound of you reclaiming your audience. Pete Waterman, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Piers,
thank you very much. Thank you. Pete Waterman, everybody.
Well, the flash vote comes back to haunt them on the X Factor when some famous songs from the movies set the challenge live tomorrow at 8, before Jonathan is joined by the judges and Naomi Campbell and Stephen Merchant on the Jonathan Ross Show after that at 10.